Hi, my name is Lauren Meese. I'm an Olympian from the 2000 Sydney Olympics. Competed in 48 kilograms for judo. And with me today, I have Jean Kanokogi, superstar, superhero. I I knew your mom when I was younger, and I remember this feeling of like intimidation, but positive intimidation that I always had around her. I was like, this woman seriously is convincing me that I can do anything I want to do within one conversation. Um, so just to start off, because like you're the first person that I'm interviewing, um, I got this idea. I was listening to Jason Morris had a little podcast that he put on with Steve Cohen, and Eve was mentioned because there were some women left out within the list of accomplishments. And I always wondered why we don't really have like a rich history of female judokas that's accessible as far as like the history of how things came about, the first like trial Olympics, and then obviously when it started officially. So can you just provide a brief introduction of who you are, your accomplishments on and off the mat, um, and anything you can say about your mom as well?
Sure. Well, I'm Jean Kanokogi and a former member of the U.S. team back in the day. So I've medaled internationally and nationally at Pan Am's, the original Fukuoka Cup. Just it was crazy back then, and we had so much fun. I've got a PhD in psychology, and I'm the director of mental health for the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, which is about 36,000 members, and providing help with mental health and struggles with mental wellness. I'm a speaker on mental health and wellness topics to really help the audience cope with whatever struggles that they're dealing with, and really trying to help people not be impervious to adversity, but handle adversity and be resilient to adversity. I'm a retired federal agent, 25 years in law enforcement. So I've seen it all, everything from the underbelly of society to the best humanity can offer. I've investigated all sorts of crimes, everything from drugs to bribery, fraud, terrorism, you name it, I've investigated it. I'm a 9/11 first responder, being a New Yorker and working in lower Manhattan. I responded to the attacks on September 11th, and I was digging on the pile for quite some time down at Ground Zero. And from 9/11, I got sick not too long ago and had a brain tumor that had to be removed. About 5.5 months ago, I had two brain surgeries. And a week ago, I had an injection in my throat because I lost my voice, and the injection in my throat to bulk up the vocal cord. So, this is how I'm able to speak with you. So, less than 6 months ago, I've had two craniotomy brain surgeries and a needle through my neck. And here I am today.
Wow.
Uh, and lastly, which really brings this home, is I wrote the book Get Up and Fight, which chronicles the life of Rusty Kanakogi. I co authored it with her and I wrote it in her voice. So anybody that knew Rusty can hear her speaking her words to you.
Wonderful. I actually, bad girl, but I haven't read it yet. And I'm gonna actually go ahead and put it in my Amazon account after I'm done talking with you. Which kind of leads into, so what type of historian do you feel your mom was for women's judo? What kind of information, and I'm going to jump around in some of the questions but what kind of information do you think that she would want people to know about the development of women's judo in the United States, internationally? Do you believe that there's a level of importance in documenting the history of women within the sport? Just kind of elaborate on that.
Well, that's let's unpack that piece by piece because
Okay.
there's just so much to go through. The level of importance of documenting history. One of the key points is so that history does not repeat itself. The misogyny back in the day, I mean, when in Rusty's day, in Rusty's time, was rampant, whether it was overt or covert, telling women they don't belong in judo because they'll mess up their lady parts. So, of course, Rusty would retort saying, well, ours are inside. Maybe men shouldn't be doing judo. So, the typical Rusty. Um, and what's also so important is to know whose shoulders that you're standing on and know who paved the way for you. So, because gratitude is huge. I talk about resilience, I talk about gratitude. So if you have a level of gratitude, it actually carves a neural pathway to open your mind and to progress and propel yourself forward. So really to navigate any waters and any challenges, such as having to do the extra push-ups and the extra training and the extra burpees and everything else and push yourself with gratitude builds resilience and having that gratitude of whose shoulders you're standing on. So the people that paved the way, Rusty obviously didn't do it by herself, but Rusty forged this war against the misogynists, against the naysayers, but also know the allies and know how important the allies were, men and women, including my father, who's Japanese, and in the 1960s, standing up for women's judo had a lot of people turning their backs on him
Wow.
because that wasn't what should be happening. And he stood up with Rusty and said, "No, women belong in judo." And people who we really didn't know. And you go and you think about the old Japanese mindset of the 1960s and the 1970s, the 1980s, and that was the majority of it. But then there was some progressives, such as the unexpected president of the IJF at the time in 1980, which was Dr. Shigeyoshi Matsumae. He ran Tokai University. He founded an underground pipeline in engineering. Who would have thought he supported women's judo? But not only did he support women's judo at the 1980 First Women's Worlds, but he in 1980, I think it's 1983, had the first Fukuoka Cup in Japan because women in Japan didn't have their own international competition. So knowing the history of how we evolved, where we came from, but how much work is still ahead of us is so important.
Wow. Really well said. I'm fascinated by how all of that developed because obviously I know your mom's story and she shared it with me in person and it was really empowering, but at my age, I didn't necessarily appreciate it. So, aside from your mom and some of the other individuals that you mentioned, who else do you see as those pillars, those shoulders that today's female judoka needs to be aware of?
I think all the women that competed at the first women's worlds, the second women's worlds, people like Eve, people like Anna Marie Burns or Anna Maria Burns, people that really paved the way and paid their own way to go to these competitions more so than they do now. I mean, really scrapped. And not only did they have to pay their way, they had to bring their chair to the table and demand inclusion. Then you have competitors, international competitors like Ingrid Bergmans back in the day from Belgium, Paulette Fouillet from France, Dawn Netherwood, Loretta Doyle, or Loretta Cusack Doyle now. These people paved the way internationally. And it was so important. Their coach at the time, the late Roy Inman, actually brought the British team to the United States to train and to have these interrelations with other countries. And people from Italy, like Christina Fiorentini, would come to the United States. And it seems like everybody met up in Brooklyn for some reason at our dojo. So it was like this world stage in our little dojo in Brooklyn. But these people were all people who paved the way because of their sacrifices. They knew at that time in 1980 that women's judo was not even close to the Olympics, but they still went forward to open the doors for the women behind them. And not until 8 years later were women included.
I think it's definitely that element of gratitude that you mentioned because for our youth now, they probably can't even imagine not having the ability to even compete. Um, so, I mean, obviously, that's a factor as far as the disparities are concerned. What other disparities did you see your generation encounter? What positive changes over the decades have you seen occur? And, what are some that are unresolved?
The disparities that we encountered, when I say back in the day, it's really as recent as 40 years ago, which is not too long. paying your own way, not having matching sweatsuits issued to you, not having matching gis issued to you, having to go to your local seamstress or having somebody's mom sew on patches or going to the store and maybe getting a grant that everybody could have the same t-shirt. I mean, this was really, really scrapping it. Uh, Also, the men's team always had a place with financial support through USA Judo. Or at the time, it was the US Judo Inc., and then before that, it was the AAU, and so they always got the money. The disparities were it was night and day is what's happening now, and but yet we still have a lot to go forward with. We still have a lot of equality that um, you have to fight for. Because you know what? Rusty carried her chair because any place that they wouldn't allow her a seat at the table, she had her own chair. She brought it and she sat her ass down. Uh, you know, right now, I believe that Corinne Shigemoto is at the helm of USA Judo, and she's going to do amazing things. I know she gets it. She is a very progressive person. She's very smart, and she knows that Europe is light years ahead of the United States. So if we want to have our place on that stage, not only is it up to our competitors to medal and to train, but it's also up to the relationships and building the relationships and having our place on the world stage equally. I was traveling to Tbilisi, Georgia, last year. As I'm in the airport in Munich, I'm flipping through the channels. And here in the United States, you flip through the channels and you have every talk show under the sun and who's doing what to whom and who's the daddy. Well, in Europe, you're flipping through these channels, and there were three channels of judo, one of them of which women's judo. I almost missed my flight because here I am sitting in the Lufthansa lounge just watching judo and crying because I knew it's all of Rusty's work that got us this far, that got us. The IJF had a position or has a position of gender equity, and I mean, wow. So here I am, and then I get to Tbilisi, Georgia. Nobody speaks any English. I understand how to communicate in food and the word judo. As soon as I said the word judo, their eyes just opened, the smile. It was just natural. It was as natural as going to play volleyball in a US school. Everybody does it. It's amazing how Europe and how everybody but the United States seems further ahead. So I believe we have a lot of catching up to do, but we can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Corinne our first female CEO of USA Judo?
I think she is. I
It's a
think
kind
she
of a
is.
landmark, and I think that it's important for, regardless of, political ties and things like that, that kind of get entrenched in the culture sometimes. We have to be able to celebrate the fact that we do have a female CEO right now. And hopefully, some of the lingering disparities that you mentioned will um, be taken note of and some action upon with her in that position. So
Absolutely.
I'm
And
really
she's
excited
tough.
about that. Yeah,
She's
she.
tough and she's fair. She was a good competitor. Actually, I think she kicked my ass won nationals. So, admittedly, I was a kid still, but nonetheless, she won.
Mhm,
And but she's tough, but she's fair and she's kind,
mhm.
and a smart woman. So I really see, aside from the fact that she's a woman, she's a very, she's the capable person to bring us forward.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. As far as like when you're breaking down the generational changes, when I was traveling in the 90s, we had our own sweats and the monetary issue was there. I think it was more about having our own domain, our own representation and leadership, because I find it obviously like, there's allies within the gender equality realm of things. And we've come a long way with a lot of female leaders that have moved on into MMA. But I think that some of our disparities can be solved on our own as far as our representation is concerned. And that's kind of why I want to explore this history a little bit more because it was never told to me. I knew of your mom because she very openly spoke to me about these things. And she actually, if it wasn't for your mom, I wouldn't have competed in the Olympics, believe it or not.
Wow.
She fought for a point last minute in the change because of some situation, whether they thought I was too young or whatever. They tried to remove some points that I received from world championships. And it took your mom fighting for the fact that I was grandfathered into a specific rule change to allow those points to um, lead me to that point. If I didn't receive those points, I wouldn't have qualified my um, division. So I have I owe a lot to her. So I'm really grateful just that you're talking to me and that I was able to experience her power.
Well,
um,
Lauren, you nailed something right off the bat. Rusty was about accountability, and she was about authenticity. And she was as honest as the day is long. She didn't like to get involved with the politics. Like you said, there's a lot of politics in every organization.
right.
And unfortunately, a lot of it is ego driven, which is very sad, because it really should be about the competitor and really should be about the people who are putting their heart and soul into the sport and not about the politics and the ego and the gratification. So
Yeah.
Rusty would call people out on that all the time.
I
The
witnessed
authenticity, yes, the
it.
authenticity and the accountability. If you did something wrong, admit it and move on. If you were trying to do the smoke and mirrors dance with Rusty, it wasn't happening. I just want to highlight, speaking of authenticity, you see the logo behind me or my screensaver. It says judo, but if I move, you see two judo players. If I move
Mhm.
a little bit more, you see the ponytails.
Yes, wonderful.
Okay, well, that back in 1980 for the first Worlds, there were no logos for women's judo. It was all men's stick figures. There was not one woman's logo that she can use. And this is before all the computers and the digital and the graphs.
Mhm.
In the book, I don't know what page it is, but you will see these two women throwing each other. These are two of Rusty's students. It's Leslie and Mindy. The photographer was her student, Peter. He captured the perfect Haraigoshi with the ponytail, with everything. And that's how it was transferred as the logo. So all about authenticity.
It's funny you mentioned that when I was a kid, whenever we would compete and they'd have the trophies, I would always go and look to see if one of them had a
Yeah.
ponytail. I was so excited when they first started doing that. It seemed so simplistic and silly. Because a win's a win, a trophy's a trophy, but it meant more to me to have those decorated in my room to say, okay, like we matter, I guess. It was so silly at the time as a child. Uh, you know,
Not at all. If you can see it, you can be it. So why not?
yeah, very, very true. But I think our generation just started that gap because of your mom and all the other individuals that you mentioned. That gap started to close in the 90s as far as the disparities were concerned. But I did kind of take note of your mom's no nonsense attitude. And, when you're a 48 kilo, you're kind of tiny and, you know, cute little spunky type of stereotype that they put on you. And I remember a lot of times not getting picked on. It was more of a family pick on thing, like your brother picks on you. But some of, male counterparts would make comments. And there was something inside of me after I met her that was like, I have every right to say something back to these guys and stand up for myself. And even if they were just joking, that sense of empowerment kind of carried over. So touchy subject. And, I was raised Catholic. So part of our Catholic culture was always certain things that maybe happened that weren't it didn't generalize. So when I talk about this, I don't want it to be something that's like a deterrent for judo because this happens across the board in all cultures. But how did sexual abuse, harassment in the sport affect you, if at all?
Well, I learned at an early age to trust your gut. And I watched Rusty. So one of the things that not many people know is that Rusty used to ferret out pedophiles and sexual harassers from our sport. And she had no qualms exposing them once the evidence and the proof was there. And she worked with law enforcement. She made sure that these people were either known or exposed, well, lack of better terms, of course, known, exposed, or just thrown out and completely abolished and gotten away from the sport. How did she know it? Unfortunately, back many years ago, people would just whisper, but she listened to the whispers and she got law enforcement involved. Now, me being law enforcement, I've investigated a lot of these types of cases. Sometimes there's overt gestures. Unfortunately, a lot of this is in a lot of sports, it's very covert, hence the gymnastics
Right.
um, and especially being that this is a physical sport where we lay on top of each other and we're up close and personal. I would say anybody who doesn't feel like something's right, if something feels wrong, it's probably wrong.
Hmm.
We all have our gut instincts. And, we say, oh, we don't want to offend somebody by saying this or that. Well, number one, let's be clear. No means no. It doesn't matter if it's creepy or not. If you're not comfortable with it, no means no. And I'm not saying to take an excuse and say, please don't choke me. No, no, no. No, you're going to get choked. This is judo. This is what we do. If it's creepy, if it's off-putting, no means no. And be okay with that and be empowered with that. No matter what age you are, no matter what gender, race, or whatever it is that you are, and be empowered and know that you have that power to say no and to walk away. If your gut instinct is telling you that something's not right, listen to it. There's research. This is empirically supported. It's not just me saying it just to say it. As a cop for 25 years, I assure you that your gut instinct is 100% real. As a coach, keep an eye out for the creepy behavior. You know it. There's no absolute definition of creepy behavior, but when you see it, you know it.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that's really great about being in sport is sport teaches confidence. And it's up to the coach and the people around you and the parents and your colleagues to build that confidence, to give you the confidence. And even if you confide in somebody, okay, we have the safe sport now. We never had safe sport before. That's huge. That's monumental. Not just concussion protocol with the test that you have to do to be a coach, but now the safe sport, because a lot of coaches were like, "Yeah, I wasn't sure," or that parent has 3 kids in my dojo, so I don't know. No, safe sport it's very clearly defined what is and what is not acceptable, even if you're on the fence. Um, so I grew up watching Rusty weed out these pedophiles. I still have the files. Rusty left me everything. So if you're watching this, I know who you are. And I am law enforcement, just putting it out there. We have all the documents, all the affidavits, everything.
Hmm. I think that's important for you to actually put that out there. I laugh about it because it's mildly threatening, but in the same token,
Well, it's matter of fact. It's not threatening at all. It's just matter
yeah,
of fact. If you're
yeah,
watching this, I know who you are. It's
yeah.
just the facts.
And I think the safe sport is really helpful because there were certain situations, and I was late diagnosed with Asperger's, so there was a lot of social cues that I missed. But also, like you said, the great thing about sport is you have teammates there to kind of teach you certain things wherever you're inept. I had one situation where there was somebody of really high importance, high level importance, um, within the realm of judo during my time frame. And after I won senior nationals, he invited all of the winners to come to the hotel room for a party. And I went with one of my teammates. We were unknowingly waiting around for the rest of the invitees to show up, all of the other, and waiting, nobody showed up. And they proceeded to put pornography on the television. I was 16 at the time. And so that was where my education began with my teammates sort of teaching me exactly what you said. If it doesn't feel right, it's not. And I had a separate situation in Europe where there was a Canadian athlete who said that they had a personal trainer that was coming up to do massages. I went up. Long story short, my teammates told me ahead of time if something doesn't feel right in your gut or you start wonder why things aren't the way they said they were supposed to be, get out of there. And I had probably one of the closer calls in my life. And I don't say that to victimize myself, but rather say that there was a sense of empowerment that came from those situations where I learned a really valuable lesson that allowed me to dodge a lot of bullets as an adult without any social ineptitudes or with, I could still hear my teammates' voices in my head and I could still see those learning processes that happened when I was in my youth, which definitely facilitated, my ability to follow my gut and to
Well,
understand
I'm really sorry
how things
that that happened to you. And I'm really glad that you're able to talk about it and put it out there so that others could say, hey, wait a minute, I heard Lauren talk about this. Wow, this is what this means. Okay, this isn't right. So you're truly helping so many by talking about these experiences. So thank you, and I'm sorry it happened to you.
No worries. I think that's more about awareness as far as our youth is concerned. That's my biggest fear with a lot of the younger girls that I work with is just for them to A, have that camaraderie with their female teammates, to run things by them, to not feel isolated. Because that isolation, and I've seen it with other athletes, even growing up where we would look and go, that's not right. And it ended up being a situation that wasn't right, which like Kayla Harrison, she was really open about it. I remember her coach always like rubbing her shoulder. It's just things that were not, and we would
Yeah.
say, "What are you doing, weirdo? Stop." We would point it out publicly after a while because, but now with Safe Sport, it's so much easier, to be anonymous, to stay out of the situation and still report it. And if we had that back then, I think that that would have definitely been the pipeline for for your mom to relay all that information. So I'm proud of her for that. That's pretty awesome. What type of support do you believe that if like a female judoka can give each other to create a stronger domain and presence within the sport? And what I mean by that is more so seminars, clinics. I am hoping to start hosting quite a few athletes in the summer. Um, but what do you think as women we can do to kind of join forces to be more of a presence?
I think exactly what you said. Well, first of all, tell your story as a woman who has trained, who's been on the U.S. team, who's lived life a little bit. Tell your story to the next generation. Let them know what you went through, what you've gone through, where you're at now, because what they see right now is just the accomplished person. They didn't know about the struggles. So if you let them know where you were, what happened with you, what some of your challenges were, they can associate themselves with that, and it will be a bonding to help elevate them. And I always see success for me when I do mentoring, whether it be judo, female judokas, male judokas, law enforcement, is how many people I can help and actually make them surpass where I was at that time. So if they're 16 and they just made the US team, or if they're 16 and they're already on the US team, whatever it is, help propel them and mentor them by having them pass you, and base your success not only on how much you've helped them, but how much in not only how much you've helped them in the sport, but how much you've helped them as a person. So we can hold clinics, we can hold technical clinics, we can do a fireside chat. Sometimes just kicking around a fireside chat and helping each other grow and elevate. Talk about some of the challenges that we face as women in sport. Some of the financial challenges, one of the things that we have the Rusty Kanakogi Fund through the Women's Sports Foundation to try to give some money every year to some of the up and coming female athletes. So that's been very successful. It's not big money. We have $5,000 each year to give out. So we try to divvy it up, or try to pick at least one or two recipients a year. So uh, some people never heard of that. Some people didn't know that the Women's Sports Foundation has other travel and training grants. So let the younger generation and the next generation know what's out there as far as money, so they can get to go to some of these large international point competitions that they need to be able to fulfill their dreams. Um, and really bank on some of these women. Like there are people out there now like Carrie Chandler and Lynn Rothke and Eve that are doing amazing things, helping both young men and young women really elevate themselves, not only training technically and giving back, but giving them advice, being the other I wouldn't say a parent, but being the other person in their life that what a coach should be, somebody that the kid can lean on and can look to and can aspire to be.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think all of that really couples and kind of having that rusty attitude of, I can do this. I got this. This
Mhm.
will happen. Having that positive mindset. Really, a lot of sports psychology talks about the resilience, the positive mindset, the growth mindset, and instilling that in everybody. So when you get knocked down, you get back up.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned Carrie Chandler. I'm so proud of her because she's put her voice out there a lot more for the gender equality than I've seen in a really long time. And she's a positive human being and she's living her dream. I'm so proud of her. We
She,
grew up doing judo together. Yeah, I can't say enough positive things about her. So, what did judo provide to you in regards to your sense of empowerment? How does that translate to your life today?
well, I could tell you as a career law enforcement officer, it helped me through my basic training, through my advanced training. Having judo, when you have to do the hand-to-hand fighting and the weapon retention drills, it kind of gave me one leg up uh, because a good makikomi will stop everything. So, but it really helped me because to persevere and to get through the training is very arduous. So knowing already that I've prepared the first half of my life through training and through drills and everything else, so it made it much easier. It gave me the confidence, which was really tough to have confidence growing up. On one hand, I was a competitor. On the other hand, I was Rusty's daughter. So where was that bar set? Or who wanted to hurt me because I was Rusty's daughter? So I had to think about that on both sides of the coin. Huge shoes to fill, not because she just had big feet, but giant shoes to fill. But judo gave me the empowerment to do that. And of course, during the attacks of 9/11, I didn't hesitate. I didn't hesitate to help. Um, I think it was my judo fighting spirit that truly helped me through the roughest days, being down at ground zero. Another big thing of judo helping my life and saving my life is preparing for brain surgery. There is no way you can mentally or physically prepare for brain surgery. You just can't. As soon as I knew I was going to have surgery, as soon as I knew about the tumor and that the radiation treatments that I went through didn't work, there was no turning back. I worked out like I was training for the Olympics. I made my body so physically strong before surgery because I knew what this was going to do. 18 hours under anesthesia, um, 20 days in the hospital. I knew what this was going to do to me, to my body. So I had to be strong. Mentally, I had to prepare because, as you know, when you're fighting as a judoka, you visualize, you go through the matches, you take on anything that comes sideways. Now, you can't anticipate all of this unknown. I had no idea what was going to happen. All I knew is that I had to fight. And that prepared me not only for the surgery, the second surgery, because I had a spinal fluid leak and they had to go and take the plate out of my head and put a new plate in. It prepared me for my rehabilitation. It prepared me to learn how to walk and talk again. It prepared me for all of this. The judo fighting spirit, yes, we fall and we have fun and we choke each other and we have great times, but it prepares you for life. So anybody who has the opportunity to do judo as a youngster, and you don't have to do judo to compete internationally, you could just do judo as a dojo competitor, but it will give you that fighting spirit to survive, to live, and to fight through. When you don't think you have strength any longer, you'll find it because judo provides it for you. So that truly helped me prepare um, for the surgeries, for the needle through the neck. I mean, how do you prepare for stuff like this? No, you reach into your own get up and fight and your own fighting spirit from being a judoka. And that's what my father said to me. Remember, you are a judoka.
I think Your mom would be really proud of you. You're an absolute superhero. I
Thank you.
really genuinely appreciate just learning from you. Um, yeah, wow, quite the life you live. But I definitely agree with you as far as that sense of empowerment. There's always something in your head that tells you, if I can do this, I can do anything. I can. I've I've fought with broken hands and lack of ligaments in my body, and you just it convinces you of what the mind is truly capable of, I think is where I'm going with it. That mind over matter concept is 100% real, and you live it every day through that judo spirit. Any last thoughts as far as like historical information that you find crucial for female judokas in the United States to know?
I think it's so important to know Rusty's story, obviously, not just because she was my mom, but as the mother of women's judo. And no, in the book, I remember writing it with her, and I said to her, "You sure you want to put this in? Somebody might get offended." You know what she said? So, can you hear the voice in your head?
Yeah,
Because
I can hear it
yeah,
with the
yeah,
New York accent and everything.
exactly, with the Brooklyn accent. Like, what's the matter with you? So,
Yeah.
but it's so important to know the story of other judoka. It's so important to know Rusty's story, her story, which is history. Um, the value that the Allies give historically, who supported women's judo, and maybe who didn't, and how they changed their mindset. Because you may encounter somebody who's resistant, and you will have to change their mind. Rusty did. You can too. And I'm not saying just you, Lauren, but anybody, including a parent that says, "No, I don't want you doing judo." How do you change that mindset? What do you do? So it's so important to know the history of it to support your argument.
Right. And to learn from all of these individuals that are still with us today. I never really, aside from like the Olympic generation maybe before me, I never really had access to those individuals. And maybe just because they weren't promoted as much as the men were. Um, but regardless, I'm hoping to tap into as many. So if you have any recommendations when we're done here, by all means, send it to me because I'm really wanting to tap into as many females that have the historical information that we kind of need for the empowerment of our current female judokas. And I just am on Amazon. I'm ready to go. I'm getting it right now.
I was going to say Amazon, we have the ebook,
And
and the rustykanokogi.com, we have the actual book that I'll sign.
thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy lady. Thank you for being so inspirational, and thank you for all the work that you do in law enforcement and to honor your mom's memory.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Have a good day.